All right, welcome to this week's edition of Justice HQ's Think Tank. If you are looking for tangible tips to grow your practice and the mindset you're going to need to do it, please hit subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post a new video each week where I interview attorneys who have successfully implemented their own strategies to grow their own firms. And they're going to tell you exactly how they did it. And today, number one, we need to talk about Justice HQ's super fancy new coffee machine. I think I have a macchiato latte, which is everything. And for those of you who can see, this chair is also amazing. It's so amazing. My feet actually don't touch the floor, and I'm wearing heels. So there is that. For any of you who get a chance to come in here and check out the podcast room, please do it. Without further ado, I'm very excited about today's edition because we're going to go over one topic that is near and dear to my heart, and there is no one better to do it than Steve Rosen. Welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us today. In today's session, we are going to talk about the struggles that you may face when you are choosing to start your own practice and when you're growing it, and the mindset you're going to need to stay on track with your firm's success and through all of the challenges that are headed your way. Would that be fair, Steve?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I talked to Ashley about a subject for today, and the idea was real talk, real humble talk about stuff we really deal with, stuff that comes up along the way, real stuff, not just law stuff that comes along with owning a business and also being a litigation attorney.
So we aptly named this one Real Talk. So maybe you can start by telling us, because you have a unique journey to how you became a law firm owner. So maybe you can begin by telling us what your journey was.
Sure. So I started at Woodsmith, Henning & Berman as a defense attorney in 2007. I was a clerk there for 2 years. I worked my way up there and was head of hiring and all this different stuff. And I was about as much of a, defense firm homer as they get. I went through some hardship with my family, and I wound up a single dad sometime in about 2015. And out of necessity, I moved back from Las Vegas to Southern California to be close to my family and raise my kid where I grew up. I'm lucky now. I've married a wonderful woman. I have a beautiful family that you guys may see on Instagram. I'm probably the most supportive cast, but I transitioned from being a billable hour defense attorney, and that's what I knew how to do, to going into the plaintiff field, which was not how I expected it to be.
Right. Yeah.
And also a business owner, which, running this business is a little different than, running the screen printing company I ran in college, So I thought I knew a lot. I didn't. I still don't. That's one of the reasons why I love JHQ, because we talk about it and we kind of go down the rabbit hole on some of these issues, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So today, that was the discussion. Hey, how can we, speak to especially some of the people that are just going out on their own for the first time and say, look, there's real challenges, and those challenges are something that a lot of us go through. They're typically unique to people, but we all screw up, and there's really no choice when you're handling a number of cases, a number of defense attorneys, number of clients and stuff like that. So I'm very happy. I couldn't be more pro plaintiff than I am. I know a lot of friends that come from the defense side seem pretty even keel. I seem to have gone the completely opposite direction than I was before. So it's been an interesting journey in the last about 5.5 years.
And in one, succinct sentence, what was your biggest motivating factor for leaving the defense?
Freedom. I mean, I wanted freedom to, when I left the defense, my idea, I'm sorry, I know it's more than a sense. When I left the idea, my idea was, hey, I make a really good living if I could pick the hours that I work and make, just the same amount of money at least I'll have freedom. So freedom was the reason that I went out on my own for sure.
Okay. And are you glad you did it?
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of people here, I can't imagine working, for someone else and not having autonomy. It's
Okay.
different when you partner up with other people and you have agreements or whatever. But even on
Right.
our side with big litigation attorneys at a lot of the bigger firms, they have autonomy. And that's kind of, I think, what is most valuable.
So when you started your practice, what were you by yourself?
Yeah, so I had a very short transition where I helped a friend's firm with all their litigation. So I came in, I helped them, and I started my own firm. When I first started my firm, I had two offices, one here in California, one in Nevada. And probably 90% of my cases were in Nevada because that's where I was a defense attorney.
Okay.
So I had tons of clients, tons of referrals from other defense attorneys in Nevada while I was living in California and traveling there.
Okay. And when did you first decide to hire?
I thought it was necessary to have someone right away. I mean, I hired someone right away. I initially had a associate attorney in the Vegas office and one paralegal here in California. That paralegal is still with me today. That associate attorney is not. Um, I've had a staff range from 1 to 4 to 5 over the last 5 years.
And are you actively marketing and branding your firm?
Yeah, I mean, I use Outlier, so they do a lot of what I would consider branding.
Okay.
That's an interesting thing for me. So I came back to my hometown, and there aren't a lot of attorneys around here. So I read a book that I loved, and we talked about it in our marketing seminar. But I read a book that I loved that was
What was
supposed
it
to be
called?
about face. It's called Give by, I'll send it around, by Nick Kusimich or something. It's supposed to be Facebook marketing, but the whole idea with his Facebook marketing was try to be a big fish in a small pond if it's a really competitive field. So when I came at it, I said, okay, well, I'm in Dana Point. I grew up here. I have connections here. I'll just market to Dana Point and the two surrounding cities. And that's been pretty good for me.
So that's worked for you.
It has, because I find a lot of people, you're going to get, you could probably categorize different potential clients. Ones that approach me very often are people that, want to work within the community. They don't want to go to Irvine, Santa Ana to meet with their attorney. They like having their attorney down the street, especially when they're going through the medical side of things. And when I approach the practice on the plaintiff side, I said that I was going to make myself available to my clients through the medical side of things. I really wanted to know what their injuries were. So I don't really assert my doctors on them as much as some people do. That's not what I mean. But if they go to a doctor's appointment, I wanted them to be able to come meet with me or give me a call. So it just kind of worked well for me to keep to brand locally. I,
And you do
sponsor.
mostly personal injury?
I do all personal injury.
Okay,
Nothing
so
else.
just literally limiting your practice to the three surrounding cities, that provides you enough business?
It did as I grew. I admittedly have litigations from San Diego. Um, I'm blanking on the county name. I just got one that's literally the last county up north, I where it's basically the Oregon border. So that's challenging. It's great right now with COVID. Like everybody, I
Everything is
love,
remote. Hmm.
yeah, I love it remote. I don't have to go up to Calaveras County for a case, to take.
So is that the majority of your branding is like Facebook, social media, etc.?
Yeah, so my goal was to do two things, right? if I'm going to bring in a pre-lit client, I'm going to bring in somebody from my community. And then I'm going to work and market to other attorneys that want help with litigation. So I've been lucky to have a couple deals with different firms to be their litigation counsel. And that's how I get probably 50% of my cases, and then the other 50 come in. But I can tell you, my goal has always been, if I get 3 clients, new clients a month organically or through Facebook marketing or something cheap, I'm going to make a really good living and be a happy man.
Okay. Now, you had hit on something that I think is really important. You had mentioned that you were a single parent. And I'm assuming that you were a single parent when you started your practice, right?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was put in a situation where I didn't expect to be a single parent. I was working for a firm, that I was billing 2,500 hours a year. So I started my own practice with the idea that I need to be able to leave work to go pick my son up from, daycare. At this time, my son was 2. I have a really good happy ending story. I mean, I met the girl of my dreams a year after being a single parent, so it wasn't really.
That is a good story. That is a good ending.
Very, very lucky.
Let me ask you this though, like, because there are a lot of single parents, myself included, that are struggling with a substantial caseload, and if it's just you, do you cap your cases at a certain number, or do you take on whatever comes in and figure out how to make it work? What do you do?
Yeah, so you and I talked about this. I think this is what originated the idea of us getting together today. And it's
Mm-hmm.
I I look at value bets, right? So I come from a world of billable hours, and I knew what my billable rate was and all that fun stuff. So even though I'm not billing and I have no interest in taking on billing clients, I still look at it like that. I still want to clear, something like $1,000 an hour for per case. So if I
Okay.
get a case in that's small, but I look at it and it's like, I'm going to spend 3 to 5 hours on it because it's a minimum policy. We'll get it done with the demand. That's great money. It's 3 to 5, hours of my time. I pay my paralegals, that maybe they work on it 20 hours or something like that. And I turn a good profit on that case. But what we talked about was when taking on litigation, you know, what are these percentages that we're talking about? And everybody in their mind has, oh, I can't take on a case unless I get at least 50% of fees, or I can't take it on unless I get 30% of fees, or I'll only giving away is a little different. But, as far as your work goes, I told you the way I look at it is if somebody approached me with a case that is worth $10 million, and I thought that, you know, I, I was only getting 10% in fees in something, I'm going to make more per hour on that case than I am on something I'm getting 50% on.
Sure.
But, you know, eh, there's $100,000 policy there. So you balance it like that. And what I kind of said to you was, no, don't just look at the number you're getting, look at the amount of time you're going to have to put into a case, look at the value of your time. And then at that point, that's when you negotiate out, what the rate is going to be, or you consider the rate somebody's saying. If somebody approached me with a, 30% on a case with a ceiling of $1 million, but I was going to spend 20% of my time on it, it doesn't necessarily make that much sense if it's going to be a long drawn out process. My firm has to make a certain amount of money each month, to keep the lights on. And then we have to make a certain amount of money each quarter or each year in order for me to live the lifestyle I want to live. And so I looked at those dollar amounts and I figured out what's the value of my time. And in figuring out what the value of my time was, then I kind of have an open mind for cases. We also talked about this, it's a beautiful idea to be able to negotiate every single time a referring attorney comes to you. It's a beautiful idea to say, oh, this is a $10 million case, I'll take 30% or whatever.
Right.
What we see a lot of are these package deals, right? So we see a lot of referring attorneys say, okay, well, I have these 3 cases, and typically one's good, and that's the one they lead with and they tell you about, and then get me
Yep.
out of jam on these other 2 cases. So
Yep. Mhm.
I do the same thing. I try to look at them all together, see how much time they're going to take all together. I'm very broad on the ranges that I estimate. I take that high end range and then I figure where the midpoint kind of in settlement should go. And then at that point, I decide whether or not I can take it on. It's not an exact science by any means, and you wind up taking on more cases than you probably should as a solo. But one of the things that I wanted to convey is when looking at somebody referring you a case, look at what the fees are going to be on that case at the end of the day. Look at how much, I'm shaking my screen. Look at how much time you're going to
You
put
got so
into it.
excited about it.
And then, do the calculation from there. Don't just say 50% or 30% or whatever it is.
Okay. Okay. One of the things that we had talked about too is mindset. And we had talked before and this morning about humility.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a trait that I think we all should have, should be endless to all of us, it's humility. I really do try to approach my clients' cases, no matter how big or small they are, with this is one of the worst things they're ever going to deal with in their life. I deal with car accidents all the time. They're not that big a deal to me. You'll get past it. I've seen people in injuries that seem catastrophic and life-changing miraculously get much better, and I've seen people get worse. But we see it so often, and we see, so much money come through that we start to become jaded about it. And to put yourself really in your client's shoes, you need to be empathetic. But to do what we do, I think humility is really important. I still look at myself, and I hopefully always will, as like that, 22-year-old kid that couldn't find his, head from his ass. And I know some more things, and I've had some more successes in life, but I think that, humility is the foundation for doing what we do. Humility and empathy.
Okay. What about amongst attorneys?
Yeah, I mean, that's
You made a comment earlier that I love, and you said you've never gotten any gain from being overly nice to defense attorneys.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we have, I personally know some attorneys who love to be very critical and negative against other attorneys. I know that personally. And I always shy away from stuff like that. I don't like to criticize or engage in negative talk about other lawyers, not just defense attorneys, but in general, because I do think we all have to come from a place of humility. And I think that we all have something to learn from someone else, even if it is don't talk smack about your fellow attorneys. And I think you might have something to share on that point too, because we're a community, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple subtopics there. The first is defense counsel. I've always taken a proactive approach to litigation, and I've always kind of worked to hold my ground. Okay, what I mean by that is I'm cordial. I'm not necessarily the nicest human. I don't kiss defense attorneys' butts. I just don't do it. I stay confident because they recognize confidence, but at the same time, I try really hard to stay away from cockiness, and I don't respond well to it on the other side.
Okay.
Coming from the defense side, I mean, it's all bullshit. I mean, it really is. I was at a firm that had, by the time I left, 250 attorneys. I was well into being a senior attorney and managing whole teams and all this stuff. And I didn't know that much, and my partners really didn't know that much, but if my partners were talking to a plaintiff's attorney, they would act like, they're the best attorneys and most knowledgeable attorneys in the entire world. When I approach the defense, I'm very matter of fact. I say, okay, well, this is the way it's going to go. I'll work with you. If you want to work together, that's fine. If you don't want to work together, then this is how I'm still going to do things. But my comment was specifically that I'm not sure I've ever received a significant enough favor to justify, really kissing defense attorneys' butts. I've always just kind of been even keeled about it.
And I come from a defense background as well. So I thought that actually significantly benefited me when I became a plaintiff's attorney, because I already knew, I had written enough status reports to know what they were going to put in them, what they looked for, like your totally typical defense tactics, all of that stuff, right? I personally take this approach of I am really, really nice to you until you give me a reason not to be. And then you're going to get, and I have one referral attorney who has described me as, he's like, you're either a gazelle or you're a pit bull. And sometimes the time between those two is very short. Like people don't see it coming. So I'm like, you want a discovery extension? Absolutely. You've got a family emergency? No worries at all. Hope your kids are doing well, until you lie to me or misrepresent something on the record or file a motion that didn't need to be filed. Until you do something, then you are no longer going to get, the cooperative Ashley. Now you're just going to get the one who, is going to essentially go for blood.
So a couple of things there. First, in the status report, it's interesting. And I think we could I just saw John write something. I think we could do something on what is in status reports. I've written status reports for opposing counsel before, kind of as a joke, but hey, I know your insurance carrier. I know the format. I may still have, one of my samples here. I'll write it for you. And wrote a favorable one and sent it over.
Right.
It's really interesting. I take the same approach. I'll grant every extension in the world as long as I don't think it's going to screw my client.
Yeah, sure.
I'll grant every extension in the world. That's really not where gamesmanship will never get you anywhere. So trying to benefit your case just, with simple ticky-tack stuff, it is not worthwhile. What I'm talking about is, providing a lot of time. For example, we all know on 998, you send a 998 these days. If they don't accept it, they typically send you a letter saying that, it's not right, that there hasn't been enough time, they haven't done their IME, or they haven't done a deposition yet, or something like that. During COVID, I've gotten pretty aggressive with 998s. I'll send a 998.
You gave me a great
month after I filed the petition.
Yeah, that was a good,
a month after.
Yeah.
Because it is too soon. And they're going to give me that letter. It's too soon. And then you know what I do? I write them back a response saying, okay, I disagree, but I want you to know my client's available Tuesday, Thursdays, any Tuesday, Thursday you pick it for an IME for this or that. And then I let 4 to 6 months go by and I send another 998 and I put in the email or in the cover letter, you'll obviously agree you've had enough time now. They haven't done anything. Most of the time they haven't done the IME, or maybe they've just done the deposition or whatever it is.
Right.
You've had 6 months. That's, I give you 2 times a week. That's 48 opportunities you've had to get my client into an IME and you haven't done it. So I don't want to hear it anymore. That will
push the case.
Yeah, that will push the case forward. Defense attorneys typically don't like to drop the ball. Rarely do they get a 998 and then that day send a status report on that 998. Typically, they're holding the 998 for whatever reason, not on purpose. They don't see it. It went to a paralegal, or they ignored it, or they thought, hey, I got to write a status report anyways, and they're boggled down. They don't get to it. And then they ask you for an extension. And the reason they're asking for an extension on a 998, which I rarely ever give, is because they just didn't do their work. It's not that they're actually, doing any type of meaningful evaluation of the case. It's just that they haven't sent that status report yet.
Is that why do you tell them that's why you're not granting the extension?
I tell them, look, I can't grant an extension. However, if you come to me a week later and you want to settle for that amount of money, give me a call. I'm open. I'll always listen to, if I'm willing to settle today for $375,000.
You're probably going to be willing next week. Yeah.
Yeah. Just give me a call. And
Yeah.
that's what I, talk to them about. Just give me a call. Why do you need an extension? An extension only hurts me and benefits you. You'll still get if we're just talking about settling, you'll still get the opportunity to settle. The only time I'll give an extension is if I say, look, here's a 998, here's my entire case. These are the damages, witnesses, all that fun stuff. Here's 60 additional days to get all of it done, and my 998 will expire then. But typically, you're not going to get accepted 998 there either. You're going to get somebody that wants to go to mediation at the end of the 90 days. So it's just things you have to do in order to get them to do their job.
Got it. Understood. Okay. And I like that, because actually you told me that, and that night I started going through my cases, and I just started shooting off 998s on the cases where I couldn't get the defense attorney to push the case forward. Discovery was already completed. What now? So I just started sending off 998. So I really appreciate that. That was super helpful.
As far as, we talked a little bit about being a single parent and personal issues and stuff like that. I have a rule that if somebody comes to me with a personal reason they need an extension of anything, I'll typically grant it. I had an attorney, a very contentious case, whose mom got very sick and was in hospice, and we were supposed to go to trial a month later. I called him up before he called me, and I said, look, man, I get it. You let me know. He didn't want a trial continuance at that point. He did later, but I called him up. I said, look, real stuff happens. When my son was about 3, we had a cancer scare actually with my son. And I was in shock hospital for a week and a half, and I blew a expert designation. And I called up defense counsel, and I said, I'm a day late. I'm in the hospital. I'm sorry, we were supposed to exchange yesterday. Can I get it to you today? And he said, no.
No way.
And I said, look,
no
man,
way.
I'm going to share this with you personally. And so I, went ex parte to the court the next week, and I asked for a trial continuance, and I asked for that date to be moved as well. And in front of a judge, defense attorney said, oh, this is all an excuse, Your Honor, because he blew an expert designation. And California law, you can pretty much supplement throughout, right? So it really was meaningless. That he should have known the judge was going to allow me to disclose experts, especially when my son was in the hospital and I was literally in the hospital with him.
Yeah.
But I started crying in the middle of court, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not normally an emotional person. I can't tell you what I'm going through. I should never have to hear, the word tumor when it comes to my child, and the judge obviously was sympathetic and looked at him and said, this is, I've been on the bench for 22 years, counsel, this is crazy that you wouldn't agree to this, and didn't sanction or anything, but she looked at me and she said, what do you need? And we got whatever we need. So because of that, and that happened about a year and a half into my own practice, I did make a rule that if somebody came to me with something personal and it's real,
how did that case resolve? Because I would imagine it would have been difficult for you to ever be cooperative with that guy again. That's classic.
Oh yeah, no. I turned into that pit bull you were talking about for sure.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it settled, a month later, for a good settlement. And it's something that we should have done throughout the process, but I couldn't even tell you the name of that attorney. But I do remember, and I probably wouldn't share it, but I do remember how it felt being in front of the judge. By the way, my son's fine. He didn't have cancer. He had rheumatoid arthritis, but it was a really scary time of
Yeah. Yeah.
that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and that's where humility and everything comes in. Is, we're solos, we're litigators, we're business owners, but we're also people. And whether you're a single parent or new and a little scared, it's something that we all go through. And if you don't go through it, you will eventually. Everybody, no one's invincible, right? Something's going to come up.
Right. But I'm curious because you are so proactive on your files. You are obviously what a plaintiff's attorney should be. And, we've had a lot of discussion with Jake and Brett about knowing very specifically what your personal strengths are when you are an attorney who is running their own firm, right? As a lawyer, what do you think are those strengths about you that help you push your cases forward so successfully?
I try to be closely connected with my clients. That helps me the most. If you look at Nick Rowley's trial by human approach or whatever, it's really something a lot of us do, and it's kind of the empathetic approach to working with clients. I get to know my clients from day one. I talk to them. I get text messages on Saturdays, and with my caseload, I can do it. I'm running 50 clients at a time. So I try to get to know them. I have a pretty good memory. I have what I kind of refer to as like a timestamp memory. If I have a conversation with a client, I can go back.
If you have 50 cases, how many kids do you have total?
I have two children. Yeah.
Okay. 2 kids, 50 cases, 1 part-time paralegal, right?
No, I have a staff of 3.
Okay, so a staff of 3.
Yeah, one of my paralegals is
your ride or die, right? We talked about the ride or die. She's your ride or die, right?
Yeah.
And then your other 2 employees, what are they?
Paralegals.
Okay. How do you, and I know I have my approach to this. I'm very curious on what you do. I'm big on having, daily habits and rituals and all that stuff, which usually gets thrown off at least once throughout the day because my kids are virtual learning. And I have to find somewhere for either them to go, or I have to work from the house where I can keep an eye on my 9-year-old. But how do you cut up your time? How do you do it? Does that question make sense?
You're better than I am. I don't have a schedule, and I kind of have a to-do list, but in 13 and a half years of practicing, I don't think I've ever got through my to-do list. Some jobs you have, this is what I have to get done. This is the amount of work I have. We have, as litigators, we have an endless amount of work, right? You can always be more proactive. You can always go back through the 3rd set of discovery
For sure.
and write a meet and confirm or something.
Right.
There's always stuff that can be done.
Right.
So it's a matter of balancing really what's important. Each one of my staff members has a definitive role, and I don't believe in the way I run things. Everybody's involved kind of in everything, so there's no case manager or anything like that. But my paralegal Connor knows that he has to be on top of all the medical records for pre-lit, so he has to go back through every pre-lit case every couple weeks and make sure that we have all up-to-date medical records. It requires him to call the client, to call the treaters and stuff like that to make sure we do. And then I look through them periodically. I'll do case audits at least weekly, probably, if I wake up sweating at 3 a.m. one night because I think my whole firm is going to blow up. Seriously, I'll do a quick case audit. And I'm sure a lot of people here have had that night. I'm sure people have woken up at 3 a.m. and said, oh my gosh, this case that seemed meaningless, that eventually we were trying really hard, but we're probably going to drop. oh my gosh, now we're 6 months from the statute. What the hell are we going to do? And looking back through client communications and stuff like that to make sure that we're safe, or, we were going to get that demand out. I told the client yesterday we're going to get the demand out. Oh crap, I don't think I got the ortho records yet last time I checked. So I'm on my phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, looking at the documents in the case to see if we have something, or what was that last correspondence that they asked for, deposition dates. Did we ever respond? These things that aren't huge issues that can be resolved with a phone call to the other side. A lot of them are a phone call to your client.
Right.
Those are oddly what wake me up at 3 a.m. That and my 2-year-old.
Okay. So you have a system in place where you have the employees necessary. They have their specific roles so that everyone is on top of a case, right?
I do. The problem, I do. You got to be adaptable though. So this is what everybody understands their roles are. Okay. This is what they have to do. They have to talk. And a lot of it's about talking to clients. So you have to talk to clients every week or 2 weeks to see where they are, get the medical records. Hospital records are something that, I'm sure it's been discussed before, something that there's no reason we shouldn't have. If we've had a client for more than a month, how do we not have hospital records? I learned that was one of the first lessons I learned in pre-lit, going from defense side where you never, ever, ever do a pre-lit case to handling the plaintiff side of a pre-lit case is get the hospital records, because that bill may be enough to pop the policy. And now you're putting your client at a disadvantage if you're running up medical bills on liens that we're going to have to pay back when you could have just used the hospital bill to get the policy. So little stuff like that, but that requires talking to clients. But even in assigning staff members different stuff, today, I was telling you, Ashley, I was at a site inspection this morning, unexpectedly, because my paralegal called me and said, she's not feeling good. She's not going to go to the site inspection. So what did I do? I got in my car in 10 minutes notice and went to the site inspection. That's why my hair is, I keep it going. It's all disheveled. I showered luckily before I went to bed last night, but I woke up intending to get a U-Haul to finish packing up the stuff in my house and got a call saying, you're going to be out in a site inspection 40 miles away in an hour.
And you made it.
I made it. You got to be adaptable. I got one of these. This is like the jet pack or whatever.
I have that.
I got one of those about my 3rd year into practice. It's a life changer.
It is.
I would start working on, because I go, I'll take the train a lot if I go up to LA or I used to, or down to San Diego, and that Wi-Fi is spotty. So I bring this on that.
So let me ask you, going back, I know you may not have a schedule, you may have a to-do list, but in terms of your working up your cases, you've got 3 different paralegals, they have 3 different roles, they all know what they're supposed to do on the cases. What are your non-delegable tasks? Is that a word? Non-delegable? I think that's a word.
Yeah.
Like, what do you handle that you will not give to your paralegals?
I typically prep clients.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you.
I typically prep clients for things. If they're going to have an IME, especially if it's a neuropsych evaluation, I try to call them and talk to them about it personally. I do all the depo prep myself, unless I hire Matt, who's amazing on some of the bigger cases. I do a lot of the initial client calls. I do every intake myself. I meet every single client nowadays over Zoom before I take them on. I've avoided probably some real pain in the ass clients that weren't worth it. Or
I'm going to have to start doing that. I agree with you. Yeah, I need to start doing that.
Everyone. When cases are referred, it's the first question I ask. How is the client? Do you have a good relationship with them? It comes from the defense side. That was all about client control, which is the adjuster, setting expectations, understanding where their mindset is at.
Do you actually Do you actually talk to the clients that are referred to you as well? Like, do you do a Zoom call with them before you accept the case from another attorney?
It depends on the attorney that's referring it. I'm a relationship guy. Let's be honest. It's how we grow a lot of our firms. So
Yeah.
I would prefer to, but I trust if it's someone, that I've worked with quite a bit that's referring it out, I trust
Yeah.
what they say.
And if they say to you, decent damages, contested liability, client's an asshole.
Yeah.
Total asshole, was a jerk in his depot, a little worried about him showing up to the DME. What do you say? Do you take that client or do you not take that client?
Well, you look at that calculation I was talking about before, and you give them an asshole premium. They're going to be difficult, so they're going to take more of my time. Either I'm happy. The client conversations are my favorite thing to do. I'm happy to do those whenever.
Mhm.
It's the haggling on issues, the arguing with you about discovery. Do I really need to do discovery responses? Do I really need to give you damages witnesses? Stuff like that. Those are real nightmares, because nothing is worse. I'd rather call a client, talk to them for 45 minutes, have an issue done, than have to call them or have my staff have to call them for 3 weeks. And I still have to call defense counsel and say, hey, I need an extension or this or that, or I have to come up with a different plan with my staff or something. So you give them an asshole premium and make sure that it's well worth it.
Meaning they pay more on the fees for those clients.
No, meaning that you're going to make a value at the end of the day in taking on that client. So if I take on a case with a, ACD&F recommendation, a $1 million policy, good liability, all this stuff, you're looking at it going, okay, well, the chances of it settling before trial are decent. I'd like to go to trial, but it's, chances are decent. It'll settle before this, that, and the other. And you look at everything, but then you mix into the time that you're going to spend dealing with unnecessary issues. And I personally charge a premium on that. If I'm going to be aggravated over something that I shouldn't be aggravated about, I think twice about taking on that client. And when I say I charge a premium, I don't say, okay, the client's an asshole, give me 50% instead of 30.
Yeah.
I say in my mind, okay, the client's an asshole. I'm going to have to look at a number of things. Time is one of the components. Also, how am I going to explain away how they're going to, come off to the other side? Because client impression is...
It's so important. It's so important.
It's about if as a prior defense attorney, that would be probably the most important thing that I look at.
It is.
Above liability, because even if it's disputed liability, it's word against
Your client is believable and they're going to do well in front of a jury. That would be at the forefront of my status report. I'm like,
for sure.
Yeah, we got a couple of points on our side, but this client is going to do very well with a jury.
Yeah.
So I'm big on client presentation. When I feel like a client is not going to do well at their deposition or at their DME, that's when I get worried and we got to do a lot of prep.
Yeah. But I mean, that brings us kind of circle around on what we were talking about, humility and working directly with each of the clients and stuff like that. We're a service industry. I don't know who might not think we are. In my mind, we are. We're a service industry. That's it. I'm not selling a product. I'm giving
A service.
me.
Yeah.
Like literally me fighting for you is the service that I'm selling to you in a time where, you're probably going through stuff that you haven't gone through before.
Right.
Outside of repeat clients or repeat accident victims or whatever, most people, this is the first time they're going through it. Accidents are scary. How do I sell to you and give you an honest product?
What's funny about that is I found that a lot with the clients that were pitched to me that were supposedly very difficult, I found that if I called them and just had a conversation with them about how they were feeling, what the next steps were in the process, 9 times out of 10, they weren't difficult clients. They just didn't have things explained to them, so they didn't really feel like their attorney was really on their side. And once I would have that conversation and they would say, no one told me I was going to get deposed. And I'm like, okay, now is a really good time for me to explain to you what litigation, involves, because I came into the picture after the pre-litigation phase. So unfortunately, for whatever reason, your case did not settle. Now it's in the court's jurisdiction, which is why I'm here. Let's talk about this. Some of those clients end up becoming the best clients. They were just frustrated and nobody explained things to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you think about it in kind of a logical way, the pre-lit process, especially if, it's lasts a year or more, that's the process where they're probably personally most vulnerable. I mean, they're in pain. A lot of them are dealing with some form of, either PTSD or adjustment disorder or something like that. They went through something traumatic and they're dealing with it. So a lot of the time, that's when they would be, quote unquote, the most high maintenance, and I don't like saying that because they're just trying to get answers to questions they have that'll make them sleep better at night.
And they want to feel like, I feel like one of the things that I notice is I feel like they want to feel like somebody is on their side. And I'll tell you, one of the things that made me so much more empathetic to them was I recently had to hire a family law attorney. Now, I don't know, I do not mean any disrespect to any family law attorneys in JHQ or in the world, but some family law attorneys understand that they are representing clients at their most emotional, traumatized, vulnerable. So the client that you get during the time you represent them as a family law attorney may not even be a true, accurate reflection of who they are as people, right? I'm going through, a custody battle over my daughter, and something would happen, and I would email my attorney, and I'm like, this happened, what do I do? And I had a conversation with him once where I was like, okay, her grades were bad, but we're bringing them up, but, can you help, prepare me on what I can expect for the next hearing and what I should be doing? And he said, it's not my job to tell you how to parent your kid. And I was like, well, goddamn, a little more sensitivity. I'm scared, I'm about to go to court and get judged as a parent. My ex-husband is about to get judged as a parent. Like, as an attorney, I do kind of need you to be a little bit more empathetic to me. Like, you know what? This is going to be considered important by the judge, so you may want to do this. This is not going to be considered important by the judge. So if your ex-husband tries to, hit hard on that, don't be so concerned. But it taught me a lot about bedside manner, for lack of better words. Yeah. So I turned around and took that experience and I walked that in to my relationships with my clients. They're like, I'm frustrated. I got one doctor telling me I should get an injection. I've got another doctor telling me I need a discectomy. Now, I could say to them, like my attorney told me, it's not my job to make your medical decisions for you, right? But instead, what I tell them is, man, that's a really tough decision. I can see why you would be concerned about that. How do you feel? Do you feel like you need a surgery? Because if you get the injection, that may only be a temporary fix. But these are conversations I would definitely recommend you have with your doctor. Go with your gut. So I'll kind of try to give them tips on how to make those medical decisions. But I would never say to them, that's really not my problem. That's a you problem. Because they're looking for someone to hold their hand. Like, these are the doctors you recommended I go to, Ashley. Now they're telling me different things. What do I do? And I've said this before, and I will stand by this probably until the day I no longer practice law. I will not advocate false care for my clients to increase the value of their cases. And I tell my clients, listen, one day I'm not going to be your lawyer anymore. One day your case is going to be over, but your body that you're living in, that's going to be your body long after this case is over. So do what's best for that body. because I won't be able to come back and help you later, Like empathy and humiliation when it comes to your client relationships goes a really long way. And sometimes your client, who may seem really difficult, may just be frustrated because they don't understand the process. Now, some are legit assholes that if they came to me with a repeat car accident, I would be like, oh, hell no. I suggest you take a short drive down the 405. There's a lot of billboards. You can pick any one of those, but I am not representing you. There are other clients I've learned that just legitimately wanted to feel heard. They were frustrated. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it comes to the client and what they're going through, you just gave a great tip. So I pick 95 years old as a life expectancy, and I say you have to live in that body for another 50 years. Okay, so make sure you talk to your doctors. If you have questions, ask them those questions. I tell my clients I have 3 jobs. One is to help get you the answers that put you in the best physical position physical shape that I can do, position wise. The other is, mental shape, the best mental shape. If you want to go see a talk therapist, or just calling me and getting your questions answered continuously will help a lot there. And then I say, of course, it's my job to put you in the best financial position as well. So I tend to look at cases and say, okay, when I'm working out this calculation on how much they're going to net, what they're going to net is the most secondary to them getting treatment. So they got to get better, and they either need to do it right now on liens, or they need to do it later on their health insurance. And if they have good health insurance, how do I put the most in their pocket by limiting subrogation prior surgeries and stuff like that? So I go to a client when they're making these decisions. I say, okay, well, I'm here for you. I wouldn't want to get cut open. I wouldn't want to get stuck. Pain is a real thing that and you experience. You got to make that decision whether it's worthwhile to you. I have said to clients, I've dealt with other clients with injuries like you have, and at the end of the day, they always have the surgery or whatever, because you can only deal with so much pain, and you are going to be in this body for the next 50 years.
Right.
If you think you have a surgical recommendation at 30 and you have 2 orthos that are adamant that you'll need the surgery, and you're going to go the rest of your life without having the surgery, that's not realistic.
Right.
And I'll send you, wherever you want. They're going to tell you exactly the same thing, that it's not realistic, that in the next 6 years, you're not going to have the surgery. So all I can say to you is have it now, or live with the fact that we're not going to fully recover for your case. One of the issues that you also brought up was being empathetic to them. I really think that's the hardest thing to balance, is what your family law attorney's dealing with in being jaded and having to have a thick skin in order to do what he does, and also being empathetic. Because if you're too empathetic, you're not going to sleep at night because you're worried about your clients. I had a client this year, and I put something up on Slack about it, that I really liked. She was being treated horribly by a insurance company as far as the value of her case did, and she previously finished treating for cancer, and she got a really bad diagnosis, and it looked like for a short period of time she had 6 months left to live. How do you deal with that? If somebody has an answer to that, please let me know. But how do you deal with empathy and then finding out, this person you care about, because you're basically approaching it like I'm taking care of you, to make sure that you get what's fair, and I'm sticking up for you and fighting for you and all that fun stuff. And then how do you deal with something you can't control, and where does, that defense mechanism, like your family law attorney, that Jade, actually come in handy?
Are you talking about how to deal with you're obviously connected to your client, right? And then she tells you she's got 6 months left to live. That weighs heavy on your heart because you're connected to her. So when you say tips, are you talking about tips on how to deal with devastating news that somebody you are very familiar with is dying?
I mean, it's all of it. When is being empathetic detrimental to your own well-being? You know, if you're handling 50 clients and you're worried about every single one all the time, you're not going to sleep. You have your own family, you know, all this different stuff. So there has to be some middle ground between that and not giving a shit. Right?
So this is going to sound crazy. This is what I do. Because I do feel very close to my clients. Some of them, the ones that, if you knew me better, you would understand. The ones that I genuinely like I will fight so hard. I mean, I'd like to think I fight for all my clients, but the ones that I genuinely like and something devastating happens to them. Like I have one client where, you know, the defense firm they're just awful, horrible, evil people. Like I'm convinced that they're just like Satan. Like they're very unevolved people. Okay, very unevolved people. The client, I love her. She's a single mom, working so hard. Like broke her hip, in her early 30s, has got like 4 little kids to take care of, and she's like, Ashley, I'm so tired of this pain. I just want to get through this. I want to go back to what I was before. I get that, right? I'm a very deeply spiritual person. I study spirituality on the free time I have. I feel like I have an understanding of how trauma works, how medical injuries work. I've honestly given like holistic diet tips to my clients on how they can like heal their gut health, and I give them super proactive things that they can do to better their own health, to kind of put them back in a position of power. This is what you can do for yourself at this time. When people are going through things like that, I really feel like that idle time that is left to focus on just what is wrong in their lives is cancerous in and of itself. So for me, I rely very heavily on my spirituality and my belief that, you know, death is just the end of this physical body, but we are immortal as people and we move on. Like I read a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. I'll just leave that right there. That book changed my entire perspective on how I view other people. It actually changed my entire life on how I view spirituality. So that's how I personally deal with it. It's just a higher faith. Everyone has a path. Everyone has a purpose.
Yeah. And
yes, Kyle, it is going. Yes, Kyle, it is going. That's what I do.
It was.
Yeah.
I keep singing her praises, but I can tell you that the biggest thing that changed the way I practiced over anything is I had a young client in a rollover that was hurt pretty badly. And, you know, it was my first year and being on the plaintiff side, and on the defense side, you just look at, you know, these variables, right? And the value of the case comes from these variables and everything like that. You don't really think there's a person attached to it.
You don't. You totally don't.
And my wife said to me, you know, I was on the phone and she said to me, we were just dating at the time, she said, you really help people. And I said, really? And I'm like, I'm just an attorney. I'm just doing my job. It's all the same. And she's like, no, Steve, you don't get it. Like these people come to you, they're going through some shit. You have this opportunity. And often you sit there on the phone with them for an hour and a half and you help them. And she's like, that's my favorite thing about what you do. And we kind of, as we kept dating and eventually married, we made this promise that we would do what we can to try to help the community, help my clients take that approach, and that money would come. So when I take a lot of shitty cases because I like the client, I approach the practice of law like I'm going to do every single thing I can to help this world. And if I throw that out there, good shit will come my way too.
It's called manifestation. And that is also rooted in spirituality. Way to go, brother. Way to go, brother. Think tank going deep.
Yeah, I'm glad we could go deep. But I mean, the message I wanted to get through today was, you know, all of us have different journeys, and some of us have been practicing on our own for 5 years. Some of us have been on our own for 20 years or whatever it is.
Yep.
The beautiful thing about what we're doing, and, you know, what I throw out there is you can call me with anything. I mean, you can call me with, I don't know what the hell I'm doing as a mom or dad. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, with these cases, whatever. I'm a huge failure. We all have, our doubts for sure. And it's something you really go through, and it doesn't really go away. I mean, I'm not by any means like a success story or whatever, but one big observation I've made is no matter how good the year is financially and successful as far as cases go, it's still a struggle, like a real struggle that we go through. So,
Yep.
Yep, I agree. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for logging in. Steve, please tell everybody how they can reach you.
sure, of course. It's Steve, Steve, at S is in Steve, N is in Nicholas, ROSEN law.com. So Steve at snrosenlaw.com. There's a lot of Steve Rosen attorneys out there. So
Well,
that's why.
shocking. And I can be reached at Ashley, ASHLEY, at Laiken, LAIKEN, law.com. My YouTube is Ashley Laiken. My Instagram is Laiken, that's LAIKEN _ law, LAW _ group. And thank you so much for watching this week's edition of Justice Think Tank. Sending you joy, love, and lots of success for the coming week. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. All right, see you guys next week.